This is a course about pre-industrial economic history with a focus on Europe. We are of course also looking at other parts of the world in the course of this course. We are looking at the Americas in the colonial period, which was really of crucial importance for European economic development. We are also looking at Eastern Asia, which is always an extremely interesting comparison, but the focus is going to be on European economic history in the period from roughly the 14th to the 18th century. And this is important for a number of reasons. One of the reasons being that this is the period when long-term sustained economic growth really began in Europe. What I really like about this course is that it allows me to show how economic history is linked to other aspects of historical development. One example of this is, for example, state formation. State formation is one of the crucial processes in pre-industrial European history. The way how territorial monopolies of force came about, how they emerged, and how that is linked to economic history. There are other processes, for example, where we have similar links. For example, if we look at economic policies in the pre-industrial period, mercantilist economic policies, how this is linked to warfare in European history. European history was always very, very warlike, and how that affected the economy, how it was affected by the economy, that is really interesting, and I like showing things like that. Well, there are basically two aspects of modern economies that this course is really helpful to understanding. And the first is, if you look at a modern map of Europe, at the regional distribution of economic activity, GDP per capita, indicators like that, you see that much of this is focused on a relatively small part of Europe, at least that is where most activity is going on, and that reaches from, say, southeastern Britain across the Netherlands, eastern France, western Germany, to northern Italy. If you compare that with a similar map that shows conditions about 500 years ago in the Renaissance and at the beginning of the early modern age, you realize that economic activity was regionally distributed in a very similar way back then. So if we want to understand why things today are as they are, we obviously need to look not just at the 19th and 20th centuries, we need to look at the early modern period, and we also need to look at the Middle Ages, which allow us explaining why things in 1500 were as they were back then. The other aspect is obviously the onset of long-term intensive economic growth, which happened in the 17th century in the Netherlands and in England. And obviously we want to explain that, and just looking at the 19th and 20th centuries is simply not enough.